yourself. Michael, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Birdie. Yep. Hey, everyone. Glad to meet everyone. So my name is Michael, co-founder of Strabo. We're building a B2C fintech application that helps expats manage all their assets in one place. And as Birdie mentioned, yes, we just recently raised on Seedrs crowdfunding platform, closed it out last week, I think, and raised a little over 133% of our target. I think it was like 135 or so. Yeah, and that's it. Yeah, I've been part of Hotbed since the launch of, well, not Hotbed, but Spicebase since the launch in November. So I see a few familiar faces. I see Ross over there, known Purdy for what? Now it's been like 8 months or so. So glad to see this come into fruition. So congrats, Purdy. Congrats, MA. Well done.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And Andrew, just want to give a quick intro to yourself and Seedrs.
Thanks, Purdy. Michael. Hi, everyone. Great to meet you all. My name's Andrew, working business development here at Seedrs. So I've been here around about a year, working with companies that are looking to top up an allocation of their fundraise to the crowd. So what I'll be able to do is discuss not just around about sort of the capital raise itself, but also a way and a tool for crowdfunding to be used as a gauge of customer acquisition and building sort of loyalty with your customers. But yeah, obviously happy to connect with anyone and yeah, answer any questions that you may have. But yeah, Purdy, ready to go.
Fantastic. So we're going to start with Michael to set the scene a little bit. Michael, you'd already raised by the time you did your crowdfund. So we just want to know why you decided to go down the crowdfunding route and whether it was anything to do with customer acquisition or building community around your product or loyalty or anything like that to set the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, so we did raise a little bit of capital from VCs and an angel investor. And what we really wanted to do was accomplish a few things. One, top off our round with a little bit more capital. And then two, since we're so close to launch, we also wanted to, increase user acquisition, but also get close to our customer, right? So I guess one of the bad sides of being a B2C company is that your number one market, like distribution channel, tends to be ads or digital marketing and things like that. Hence, you're kind of separated from your user base. What crowdfunding allowed us to do is really speak with our users, right? Not only from an investor point of view, but from a consumer point of view. So I think what Seedrs does really well, at least for us, is that it merged all those three things into one single platform, and you're able to accomplish it like within a short period of time. So if you're looking for users, it's a great way to get users through a hyper local approach, like people from primarily the UK as well as the EU. Two, you raise capital within 2 months. And then three, you get feedback, immediate feedback, and you build that trust and that loyalty with your user base. So I think it was just a no-brainer, given the stage that we're at, to go the crowdfunding route.
Awesome. And Andrew, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit and talk about how other startups in your network have successfully used crowdfunding to acquire new customers or build a community around them, with any examples?
Yeah, absolutely. As Michael said, not just a way to raise capital, but a way to sort of make noise around your business and what you're looking to achieve. In terms of sort of the stages of businesses raising through the way of equity crowdfunding, it varies greatly in the sense of businesses wanting to be able to sort of engage them either at a pre-revenue standpoint, where you're maybe a beta business, where you're trying to build out or engage those that are waiting to be able to launch or at least use your product. So if you were in this situation, if you are a pre-revenue business, as you crowdfund, as Michael said, it's a finite period of time to engage these kinds of people, up to 30 days. And in this time, you're constantly providing updates of the business's sort of milestones. And while you're doing this, they're going to be answering a lot of questions on the platform. And this is how this has sight from everyone that's on Seedrs to see whether they sort of agree with what's being said and come on board. So That's for pre-revenue, but then obviously with businesses that are established or businesses that have an active user base already, it's a way to directly communicate with those that are using your product in a much more personalized manner. And I have a couple of examples of businesses that have raised with us in the past. So Snoop, which is a fintech, they started to scale up and they reached 75,000 downloads by the time that they launched the Seedrs crowdfunding campaign. So prior to going live or reaching out to the Seedrs network. And since launching that crowdfund, within 3 months post-raise, there was 150,000 downloads. So that's just one example of a business that saw a huge increase in not just engagement, but even sort of active users from the crowdfund itself. So that's just one example, and throughout the discussion today, I can allude to a couple of others.
Fab. So we're going to talk a bit about customer acquisition, kind of outside of fundraising, but you used it as part of your fundraising strategy. So Mike, when you were first trying to get people to visit the Seedrs page or, hand over some cash, how did you, for the people that hadn't heard of Strabo before, how did you find those people, and how did you convince them to trust your brand, your mission, and what you were trying to achieve with Strabo, to the point where they were going to part with cash? Because I imagine that's slightly more difficult even than them getting to use your product, is to get them to invest in your product. So what did you do to find those people and then get them to buy into you?
Yeah. So I guess, one of the constraints that we had and one of the decisions that we made was we did not want to spend any money on marketing or ads. So this is really good for, I guess, like pre-seed companies that are, strapped for cash, is that we really wanted to do direct outreach and just like pull interest from our personal and professional networks. So really, it was really about like segmenting our potential investors. So there's people within our networks that we could, reach out to, and there's the investors on the Seedrs platform, right? So our personal professional networks, they know us, they've been receiving our newsletters, they're, beta users, things like that. So I think the trust element was already established. So I guess that was kind of like low hanging fruit. And then on the Seedrs platform, that's where the challenge is, right? So there's probably there's a pro and a con. The pro is that anyone that's on the Seedrs platform, they're already vetted investors. They probably invested before. And if they already pre-registered for your page, you already sparked some interest. The downside is, you have to establish that trust, right? So why would they invest in Strabo versus, the other 30 campaigns that are running simultaneously? So I think like two things that we did, I think we did quite well, was we responded within a timely period. So if someone requested documents or asked a question on the forum, I gave ourselves like an SLA of 1 hour. It's like, if someone asks for something, get to them within 1 hour. Even if it takes longer than an hour to answer the question, shoot them a message, say, hey, we're going to get back to you real quick, and then follow up immediately. I think that's something that we did quite well. We organized a day. We directly answered questions. I know you guys have probably run, through this. When you ask someone a question, they try to divert or walk around. If they ask me 5 questions, I give them 5 answers, plus an additional 1 just for good measure, right? So I think just having that proactive, transparent approach when it comes to communicating with your investors, both from your personal network as well as the ones on Seedrs, I think that's what really helped us, convert them into investors.
Can I just ask, with the personal network, I know you said that you had some already from your beta. How did you get them at that point? Like back a step, when you were in the beta phase, how did you acquire customers then? Yeah,
so for the beta phase was really just networking. So, drawing from your personal professional network. So posting things on LinkedIn, messaging them, giving them a call, email, things like that. And then also just networking, in the startup community, right? So when you go to networking events, when you participate in different accelerators and stuff like that, word of mouth travels quite quickly, and you could get a strong user base from that. So depending on the type of company, right, you have to ask the question, how many people do you really need to beta test your product? And to be honest, I don't think it was that difficult to get 150 people. It was really like a pool of 500 and then 150 converted, right? So it's really just grassroots marketing. I don't think anyone should really spend a lot of money, if any money at all, to get early beta users, especially if you have contacts within your target demographic. It just takes a little bit of work.
Did you have a set number in mind? Was that 150 in mind, or did you have a general range? How did you narrow in on how many people should be in that beta group?
Yeah, I think we just said above 100, and the interest peaked to 150, and then we capped it off at 150, primarily for costs, because a lot of our costs come from usage of the platform, from APIs. So 150 was kind of like that sweet spot where we could manage costs and still get enough feedback.
Makes sense.
When you were showing that beta traction to investors, did you get any feedback specifically on that number or what the traction looked like, or do you think that helped you with the raise?
On the Seedrs platform, no. Outside investors, angels and VCs, they did, hint and said, well, how come you just don't, turn it up a notch, right? Get 1,000, get 2,000. And really, it boiled down to costs, right? That's the key reason as to why we couldn't pull that lever. But yeah, there was a little bit of interest outside of Seedrs, for us to grow a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Andrew, are there any other tips that you give to founders who don't necessarily have a large personal or professional network, but are looking to fundraise or acquire a bunch of new users and use the platform to go out and generate that interest?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, businesses that are raising on Seedrs, you have businesses that are B2C, so those that have either an existing waiting list or active users, and it does help to be able to bulk up the number of investors always for a campaign. Reason for why, I guess, so I'll come back to be able, like the strategy to be able to tap into sort of groups or investors if you don't have quite that network. But the traditional method for those B2C businesses, as Michael said, reach out on LinkedIn, use tools, those that know you the best, existing relationships from past companies, possibly sort of partners as well. So working with the likes of yourself to be able to, develop those connections. Before I come back to it, I might just jump into the sort of the process of how the crowdfunding process actually works. And so pre-registration is a way for businesses that are about to launch a crowdfund to build up interest prior to launching live. This is usually around about 2 weeks. And this is where we provide sort of tools, soft tools, marketing tools to reach to direct email addresses to be able to structure sort of templates whereby you can softly say, come with us on our growth, rather than an aggressive approach of saying, we need cash, we need capital, we need to be able to grow, and we need you to join us. It's done in a much more delicate way than that. And we help you with that. One thing for founders or those that are running a campaign in pre-registration is to be aware that the number of pre-registered users, so those that pledge an amount, they say that they're going to be investing X amount between a range, and from there we can determine how much we feel we may be able to raise once we go live. And this amount, or the number of investors, is usually 20 to 30% of the amount of people that have actually pre-registered. So please do just take that into consideration for prior to a launch, because there will be dropouts. And for when you then flow into a pre-registration into a private mode, which is where we announce that it is live. However, it's rather unique in that it's before everyone else jumping in. It's not publicly live on the Seedrs platform. So this is where you do need to reach out to those that know you the best to build up that interest. Investors or people that are investing that £10, £20 note, are extremely helpful for a fundraise. Reason for this is because crowdfunding is it's all about optics. It's a very unique way to be able to raise capital compared to every other method. So numbers are crucial. It's one of many things. And one thing for this is to ensure that while you're private, public, you're coming to them with sort of product milestones. We can also touch on sort of investor perks as well, strategies to engage those that invest a certain amount to benefit for when a product is listed. What is it they can take advantage of? So many companies are listed today that you can jump on and see some of their investor perks, obviously extremely dependent on the product or the service in which you're providing. So now coming back to your piece on the engagement, if you don't quite have that network, is to be able to ask around. This is where accelerators, incubators are so helpful because they aren't just there to be able to provide guidance into the operations of the business, but also just conversations around people that are building a similar product at a similar stage to you. So that's where, I guess you guys come in, and founders like Michael reach out to him because he's been able to build something quite spectacular. And it's all about sort of this ecosystem as a whole.
Are there any user engagement or search tools that you see people try to use to find beta users and it's just a complete waste? Like, do you usually see a high ROI on like Facebook adverts or any form of advertising?
Yeah, one thing which I would steer clear of and a lot of energy is spent on is PR. Public relations, like getting in the newspaper and things like that, that generally does not convert into investment. It's all about impressions in that sense. So we find that strategies of marketing for direct investment is best using email. And because that sort of is unique to a particular company with a particular product, retargeting, as Michael said, these investors have set up for KYC AML, so they're ready to invest. So these people are ready to click the button and to be able to invest in something to do while you're live, rather than in pre-reg, which is a sort of a stepping stone to getting them engaged, to use those marketing tools as a direct investment tool. Whereas I guess digital advertising, you are retargeting those that have visited Seedrs' website before, similar campaigns. However, it's more impressions. It's more about making noise about that you do exist and possibly getting them interested for a later stage.
Michael, were there any tools for you that were not at all useful for finding beta users?
That were not useful.
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah, I would always look out, and maybe a lot of you guys have experienced this already, but there's a lot of companies that promise you glory, right? They'll promise you investors, they'll connect you with thousands of people, then charge you £20,000 for whatever. Same thing goes with marketing, right? I wouldn't trust any agencies that promise traction, to be honest, especially in a short period of time, especially if you haven't, if you weren't able to capture your first, 1,000, I wouldn't even say users, but at least 1,000 people on a wait list. I think especially if you're B2C, a lot of early traction can be, captured from grassroots efforts, through networking and things like that. One thing that we did find quite useful that we're still currently doing is automating direct messaging on LinkedIn. So there's a couple of free tools like Relaxy that, you could use to identify your target audience, whether they're investors or beta users. And then, you could set it up and automate it in such a way where they send messages and connections on a day-to-day basis. Conversions are okay, to be quite honest. So for example, I probably convert about 60% into connections, and about 10% of those people actually sign up. So they're not too bad. But the good thing about social media is that even if they don't sign up, right, you could always retarget them through social media posts and things like that. So now they're in your pool, right? So we do like that system. Very, very affordable. More than happy. I'll send you guys a link in the chat in a little bit.
And one of that actually kind of leads on nicely to the next question. You've answered it a little bit, which is from like the pool of all your potential users to the amount that see your campaign, to the amount that engage with it. Do you know what that funnel looked like for you, Mike, in terms of percentages or numbers, so people know what, if they're starting right at the top of the funnel, how many people should you be reaching out to this week whilst you're trying to engage loads of new potential customers in order to actually get people to convert?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we're actually in the process of really ironing that out, like what should top line look like, conversions from there, so on and so forth. Really we default to industry, I guess, standards, right? Just Google, what's the average conversion rate for a fintech B2C. But now that we have historical data, we just try to up it a little bit. So right now, and it's really difficult because with GDPR, if people opt out of cookies, it's really difficult to track total site visitations. So what happens is, 40% of site visitations don't opt out, and then your conversions look better. So right now, for the past couple of weeks, it looks like we're converting like 15-20% of site visitations to signups, but that's not really the case because X% is actually opting out, right? So it's probably closer to 7 or so. So we just try to increase it little by little, and then understand like what are the mechanisms that help us improve conversions, right? Is it more information, better SEO on the website, better response times when people like reach out to us through the contact forms. So we're really just playing with our website as well as the way that we engage site visitors and people who reach out to us.
I guess this is a question for both you and Andrew. Maybe you've seen this in Seedrs companies as well, I don't know. But did you have one idea of who was your target beta user? You'd built out a persona, and the actual user that you wanted to target at the end of the beta was different? Did you test different personas throughout the beta, or was it did it run pretty much as expected?
Michael, I'll leave that one with you.
For testing beta users.
Mm-hmm.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry. So
yeah, did you find did you go in to the beta thinking that your target user was like this persona and ended up being something else?
Kind of, yeah. So really good question. So we wanted to test our beta with 2 types of users. So given that we're a platform for internationals, the hypothesis for us to test is, well, do internationals really want it? So let's get a nice group of people of internationals to test out the application. And then there's also the other group. It's like, well, it's not only for internationals, they could also be used for domestic users. So let's get, UK-based people on there. And then within those 2 segments, we said, okay, where do people fall on the financial management spectrum? And then one end you have people who are like budgeters, people who are just looking at how much they spend on a day-to-day basis. And then on the other end, you have like really advanced, I guess, investors who are actively investing, watching their money, so on and so forth. So we thought that, the advanced investors would want to use our applications. But in fact, from our beta test, we found that actually, it's people in the middle, somewhere in between budgeting and advanced investors that actually like it. The advanced investors, they're happy with spreadsheets. They want to use spreadsheets for the rest of their life. Cool. Budgeters, they're kind of on a different part of their journey. So really, we're looking for people who aren't necessarily looking for, looking at their day-to-day spend, but they are looking to generate assets, right? So like saving more, buying a house, things like that. So yeah, to answer your question, we wanted to test different types of like customer segments and then hone in on that after the beta. So that's pretty much, it's kind of like a, shot out a net, saw what bite, and then narrowed it down.
Andrew, just back to the previous question, is there, Michael kind of answered on behalf of Strabo, but is there any kind of data that you have in terms of that funnel, like what most people seem to do in terms of customer acquisition from throwing out that net to converting people? Are there any percentages that you guys have that would help people understand how many to target in the first place?
Yeah, so we look for, depending on the kind of company that's raising. So if it is a B2C business in a particular sector, so that sector, we would look at the kinds of demographic or the users and who they are. So say a company raising at the moment called Proportunity. It's a mortgage lender for those that can't put down a deposit. So we know full well before the campaign that the likelihood is that the investors that are pre-registering, those that are going to be investing, may not be high net worth individuals because they're in this sort of bucket of people that don't have enough for a mortgage. So this is a consideration we take on board for the amount that would be pledged or the amount that would be invested from each and every single individual. That's from their user base. But then in contrast to that, we know that Seedrs as prop tech interested investors are high net worth individuals. They're people that invest higher tickets. So we work on those two parameters to be able to ensure that the accuracy of launching, we can predict how much we think we can look to raise. So when it comes to that funnel, it's usually that 20 to 30% dropout from pre-registration to actually investing. But it does vary depending on the kind of campaign that is. But in preparation, we'd work this out and strategize with you in how we'd best be able to reach out to the people that are going to be most interested in the campaign.
Do you have any data on, for the raise, how much the person is bringing in through their own network versus how much is invested through Seedrs investors? Like, how much are you bringing to the table versus how much is the founder bringing their own network to the table?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's a very common question that we're asked from founders that are coming to crowdfund. People think, you go back years, a lot of it was on the founder bringing across a huge amount from their network. But we find with this trend of not just raising for B2C businesses, but B2B, there is an increased interest in Seedrs investors repeatedly investing and building a portfolio with us. And I think that's testament to a company that just raised, Gazelle Wind Power. And it was, they raised, I think, 1.2 million through the Seedrs nominee, which is a single name on the company's cap table. They brought across Seedrs investors brought across £800,000 worth of that 1.2. So it is depending on the company, depending on the sector, depending on the trends, generally for these retail investors. But then if you were to go to, say, maybe a beta kind of business, I think it would be majority of those who really do have a sort of a belief in that product and what they're going to be bringing across to make that investment initially. And I think as you grow as a business, to come back to possibly crowdfund with those that are now using it, with those that missed that original raise that are actually actively using it, to be able to then opt them in. And then from that, the Seedrs investors would be reassured from those that are using the product investing to then top up that allocation with that amount.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Do you have any other questions? I've got one more and then.
Yeah, I have one more too.
Okay, do you want to go first?
So, Michael, you touched a bit on this, and we talked about it at the start a bit, but how did you decide what metrics to track during your beta? Like, let's say your top 5, how did you decide that those were your top 5 that you were going to focus on, or, top 3, top 4, whatever? And then for Andrew, what are the sort of metrics specific to a beta that, investors at Seedrs get really excited about?
Okay, the key metrics we tracked was retention. So that was huge. Average session time per user, average sessions per month, and which other ones? And then number of accounts that were linked per user. So those are like the 4 key metrics that we were tracking throughout our entire beta testing. And this was pretty much derived from speaking with our advisors and investors and asking them, what are some of the things that you're looking for? Cost of acquisition would have been on that as well if, we were spending money to acquire customers. So that's going to be the next metric that we're going to be, focused on pretty closely. But yeah, I think those are the 4 top product metrics that we're tracking.
Okay. Andrew, what about you?
And then I might just come from a general sort of investment standpoint on sort of what people look at on a campaign for when it's live. They look at sort of, I think, number of accounts that have been created and the increased sort of month by month growth of that sort of account creation. I understand that that's going to be variable depending on the stages of the beta and how long it's been in beta for. But they obviously want to see that the company has been working in the months prior to a campaign. So that's why timing of the crowdfund is essential to make sure that you're going to be launching with milestones to be able to chat about that you have done during and obviously post. So it's then also partnerships that have been created with the business, who you're looking to work with, or who you're looking or signing contracts with, sort of letters of intent, MOUs, sort of that validation, obviously valuation on an investment standpoint. And that's quite crucial because there are a number of businesses raising alongside you. They will be using this as their market analysis to be able to judge, okay, not just from sort of products that may exist that are similar to your business, but even on the same platform. So valuation is critical there. And then obviously, just updates throughout, just updating them on information that they feel is most necessary for the product itself.
Cool.
We're going to move to some questions in the chat. Oh,
sorry, last question from me, which was just, do you have kind of just one top tip from the experience of getting your users to engage with you in this way that you would share with other people? And that can be from a turning them into investors standpoint, or just from a customer acquisition standpoint more generally. Michael, and then Andrew.
Let's see. Yeah. Honestly, I think if there was like a key takeaway of, my experience with just engaging with users either on or off the platform, it's really like transparency and like proactive engagement. I think a lot of companies nowadays, they underestimate the power of like proper customer service, right? Just getting back to people, answering the questions, things like that, and just being a very honest, transparent individual and company as a whole. And I think that really goes a long way. So when I had a lot of one-to-ones with the Seedrs investors, which is something that we did quite frequently, right? So I offer my Calendly link to all the Seedrs investors. Hey, ever want to get on a call? If you have any questions, here's my personal email. Here's my, calendar link, book a time, whatever. And I think they really appreciated that. So, they liked that they could see the face behind the company. They liked that, they get their answers answered, or the questions answered quickly. And just doing that consistently over and over again, I think it nets results, improves conversions, and yeah.
And then just from me, I think as Michael just mentioned, I think, transparency. So a lot of founders do think that crowdfunding, it's a way to be able to, acquire customers, to be able to raise capital. And these people are essentially, they are investing into your business. So ensure that every time that you update shareholders quarterly, half yearly, you update those that are investing as little as 10 quid into the business as well, because these are the people that are using your product. So make sure you continue to engage them, whether you just do crowdfunding once, whether you do it multiple times, continue to engage with them. There's one place to be able to do that on Seedrs, so it's quite easy to be able to do that. Then it's timing. Advice for companies is to make sure that you crowdfund at the right time. So crowdfunding isn't for every business. It's not. So if it is going to be a point where you're raising either now or in 6 months, for when you know full well that you have achieved particular milestones in which you feel is most going to be most beneficial if you reach out to the wider community by doing a unique way of raising capital through crowdfunding, then wait 6 months or wait a year. So timing is of the essence, and happy to chat with anyone about sort of how you can plan that sort of build up to the crowdfund as well.
Okay, thank you. We are going to move to some audience questions now. Reminder, please raise your hand if you want to ask your question live. First question for you, Michael. Someone asked in the chat, how did you know when your beta was over and that you were ready to properly launch?
I'd say 3 months. Well, it's a little difficult. So we rolled it out in 3 waves over a course of 2 months, and then we wanted to get about 3 months worth of testing. So that's pretty much, we took a very, build, measure, learn approach to our beta launch. So we built it, launched it, measured results. And then from that, understood exactly what our next set of requirements are going to be or which direction we're going to go with, whether we're pivoting the product, pivoting the market, or we're staying the course. So I think it took about, so in total it was about 4 months, I would say, 4 to 5 months worth of testing. And then from there, that set the direction of where we're going to go, right? It's like, all right, well, so pretty much what happened was we're like, a lot of our hypotheses were correct, with the exception of a few like market changes that we had to do. But from that, we, reestablished or redesigned our website, new product features. And then from there, we started to plan our public launch. So it went from beta, measuring results, creating new requirements, and then planning our launch for public. And then Seedrs campaign was perfect because it happened just like right after we were done with our beta. So we had good data. We knew exactly when we were going to launch. We knew exactly how much money it was going to take. And it was just like in this nice little sweet spot where we could capture more users, acquire more financing, and then launch shortly after. So I think, the stars aligned in our favor in the past 6 months or so.
Awesome. We'll go to someone with a raised hand. Arjit.
Hi, Michael. My question for you. So it's a two-part question. The first part is, how did you communicate with the users during the beta phase? And number two, how did you communicate with investors during the beta phase?
Yeah, so that's a good question, especially for the first one. So we set up a couple of different channels. One, we set up a community forum where users could go to the forum, post questions, and we would answer it. The thing with forums is that kind of like you need to gain momentum. So it took a very long time for us. We actually never gained momentum on it. So we had a lot of site visits on the forum discussions, but very little engagement. And then what we did was we put a little link where users could just shoot us messages, like via email or through like a contact form. We've actually found that to be quite effective. Inbound wise, it wasn't that many. Out of the 150, maybe 10 or 12 did that. But a majority of the feedback that we got was from direct email marketing, right? So I think we spoke with 30, maybe about 40 people just from email marketing. And then from the forum was probably like 6 or 7. So out of the 150 people, we were able to collect feedback from around 50, 60. And then second question is, how do we engage with investors? So I send 2 different types of newsletters. I send a monthly newsletter to our current investors, and then a newsletter for our potential investors. So potential investors are, the investors that said, hey, like what you guys are building, keep me in the loop. I'll invest when you hit X, right? So pretty much I just construct this email newsletter based off of product, traction, team, financing metrics. And that's what we did during beta, and that's what we do currently at the moment.
So an interesting point, we'll invest at hitting X. So was that a moving goalpost? Like, we'll invest once you hit 500 users, but once you get towards 500 users, and you can get to 500 users, we'll invest when you hit 1,000 users. So was it like that? Did you see there were moving goalposts?
Kind of. I mean, so we've only really converted one investor off that newsletter. And all the other investors on that list are pretty much investors that express interest at the seed stage. So we're currently at a pre-seed stage. So they really want us to get to a certain milestone, such as, 1,000 paying users, or, get your CAC to under whatever, stuff like that. So these are, email marketing, as Andrew mentioned, is pretty effective because it's catered and it's a direct channel between you and that user or investor. So I think that's probably like the best communication that we've been using so far.
Okay, shall we go to Richie next, and then we'll move back to the questions from the chat.
Hi, it's a question for Andrew. So I got a wee bit lost halfway through. When you're looking at crowdfunding, You mentioned that you can crowdfund when you're at beta stage if you've got.
Yeah.
Sorry, Richie, just lost you for a second. I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry, muted.
That
Yeah,
was
just
my fault.
yeah. So the question is, when you're crowdfunding, can you crowdfund during beta stage, or you later on you mentioned it's probably best to crowdfund once you've launched and you've got paying customers. What's kind of the general gist? Because kind of I've got people lost halfway through that.
Sure. It varies greatly in terms of the kinds of companies that raise through the crowd. You have companies that are raising 100K all the way up to 15 million. And then for stage, it is definitely companies that are in beta stage all the way up to revenue generating. We have one company at the moment raising called Pennyworth, which is a fintech. I can share some of the details. I'll send them over to Purdy on their raise, and you can have a look at what they're outlining on their campaign to gauge that interest from Seedrs investors as well as those who are on their wait list.
Okay,
One for Michael. So a lot of these people are going to be trying to get their first lead investor. What did you do to find your first investor? And do you think it had anything to do with your traction or your beta?
Yes, I think so. The traction in the beta definitely made an impression when it came down to securing investment. So, I think we made the fatal mistake of trying to raise capital too early before we had any traction. Hence, we never converted any investors. The minute that we launched our beta, we had it in the market. We had not only, strong interest, when we reached out to investors, but strong interest, with investors reaching out to us. So I haven't really done a lot of outbound investor outreach. Usually they give me a call and things like that, which is nice, right? So the tables have kind of changed in a way. They switched. Now, so yeah, the beta to traction definitely helped. And the way that we were able to communicate with investors was by leveraging various demo days. So there's a couple of really good ones across the UK. The one that recently passed was the Seed Stage demo day. Yeah, that one. There's really good ones like that as well coming up. Like even in the States, there's one called Stonks. So if you guys are in fintech, that one's a really, really nice demo day. And just really networking with different people. And I think nowadays it's quite easy to get a CRM and a database of active investors across multiple sectors and regions. I mean, there's probably at least, I don't know, like 10 different Airtables that I have bookmarked. So if you guys need it, more than happy to share it as well.
We'll share some in the follow-up email today for everyone, and any Michael that you have, we'll chat later and make sure that everyone gets that full list, because there are loads that are public. That have lists of investors that are actively investing. So definitely worth just going out there and chatting to as many people as possible.
I might just jump in there, Purdy. So on the back of that email list, there is a tool out there, and I'm not sure what people's perception is of it, but I've spoken to a couple of founders that use a tool called Outreach, and it's a way for being able to collate emails and structure them in a sequence where you send one email, then you automatically follow up with another, with another to those email addresses. So hopefully no one on this call is someone on that list, because you may be receiving a couple of emails from an outreach sequence, but it automates the process of cold outreach. Obviously warm is the best, but if you have access to these Airtables of investors, that's a great start, especially for beta. Yeah.
Awesome. Luciana, do you want to jump in with your question?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. This question is from Michael. I would like to ask you, why did you move forward with Seedrs, with the crowdfunding? Thank you.
Yeah. So they reached out to us, and they were, they were very convincing. They had a lot of data and a lot of companies that were similar to mine that raised and were successful. So in the UK, we look at really two crowdfunding platforms, right? Seedrs and what's the other one? Crowdcube. Yeah. And I guess it just really boils down to identifying like which platform could get your company, your specific company, to raise the most possible. And there's a lot of variables to factor in, right? Like which market, what type of company, and other stuff like that. I honestly did not look at Crowdcube. I think that, you know, from what I know of Seedrs, it being strong in fintech, strong in B2C, I, you know, said it's kind of like a no-brainer to go with Seedrs over Crowdcube if I were to crowdfund. Experience with them have been great. Team have been awesome, very informative, giving me information all the time. So yeah, so far it's been awesome. It's been good.
Well done, thank you.
We've got another question from the audience for you, and Andrew, you can probably have some words of wisdom to share on this. How did you arrive at your valuation for your Seedrs raise?
For me. So the valuation was determined by our lead investor. So we brought a lead investor into the campaign, and it was discussed with them. It's really hard to come up with a valuation when you're pre-rev. So I guess, you know, there's a couple of things you could do. Is you could look at very similar companies, you know, in the same market and see exactly what they raised at. You could do that like on Crunchbase, PitchBook, other platforms like that. Even at that, it's still very difficult, especially at a pre-seed. But I would say, and Andrew, probably correct me if I'm wrong, I think a lot of pre-seed companies raise, let's say B2C SaaS, probably raised in between 1.5 to 3 mil, maybe up to 5 mil at a pre-seed. But it really boils down to, yeah, like, you know, the type of company, your potential scalability, and whatever your investors, your lead investors want to value at. So.
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. Yeah, I think for Seedrs, we are a follow-on funder, so we take whatever it is that the lead investor is setting the terms at, the economic terms. So we take the same share price, the same share class, and valuation of whatever is listed, so that all of our investors that invest through the platform are coming in on the same terms as the lead. So this is quite good for these sort of earlier stage businesses, because any retail investor can then come in on the same terms as a lead. So when it comes to valuation, obviously at the moment, everything's, you know, valuation is up in the air for lots of businesses raising. But it's where you just need to be able to be as clear as possible in what it is that you're looking to achieve, and that lead investor, make sure that it's someone who is possibly reputable in the space in which they're investing into, so that if it does come back to someone asking, okay, so how is it that you came to this valuation, you don't just refer to the market, you don't just refer to similar companies that have raised at this particular valuation, but you can then reassure them with full well knowing that a lead investor has has experience in this particular sector, because I think retail investors are also reassured by not just the business, but also who's investing at this early stage.
Do you have any data from Seedrs on the average valuation of all companies that have raised on your platform over time, or anything like that that you can share?
I'll be able to find something for you. Absolutely, Birdie. Yeah.
We can share that afterwards. In terms of the waiting list, and you know, you were talking about building up this audience before your campaign goes live. This is probably more for Andrew, but Michael, you might have personal experience as well. How long does that take on average to build up this list of people and start communicating with them to the point where they're kind of interested in putting their money where their mouth is when the campaign goes live? How much prep is kind of required? How long might that take?
I might do the stock standard approach for just crowdfunding in general, and then Michael, you might have a different approach for Strabo in particular. But when it comes to crowdfunding, it's all about sort of ensuring that these investors are sticking to a time frame. So usually the process for raising with Seedrs is around about sort of 3.5 months. This is from the moment in which we begin engagement and begin preparations of a campaign, all the way up until the moment in which funds land in the company's account. So building up momentum before launching is the most time-consuming time for when companies are looking to raise. And this is where you need to time it so that you're reaching out to those investors just before you're looking to raise. So pre-registration is that launching soon page, and this is usually live for that 2-week period. We find from experience that beginning to reach out during this 2-week period is the most timely, because firstly it's at the forefront of their minds to be able to then transact in 2 weeks. If you start reaching out earlier than that to retail investors, they tend to lose interest. Of course, that lead investor, those high ticket, you need a longer period of time to be able to work with them. But throughout the campaign, we can carve out those lead investors if they invest anytime during the campaign. Because the optics it's such a public way of fundraising. We need to continue to engage them. But then that 30-day period, it gives them a line in the sand. They need to transact before then, which always helps with sort of angels that like to sometimes drag their feet. Yes.
Okay, we'll take probably 2 more questions. And first one is Lucy.
Hey guys, we are looking to raise crowdfund. Is it notoriously bad to raise through summer? So August is bad, obviously, as we know, to reach out to investors. Is that the same for crowdfunding as well? If we were looking to raise in like September, October, but reach out through August, do you think that's a bad idea or not very lucrative?
Lucy, nice to meet you. I think in terms of sort of seasonality for crowdfunding, there isn't a seasonality in terms of sort of the liquidity exchanged on the platform. That's from past years. We do tend to veer companies away from raising around about Christmas time, but it's rather different, the retail investor to institutions. Institutions like to go on holidays around about sort of those times, whereas retail investors continue to have their phone on them and invest as they would for other things. So in terms of sort of the timings of the crowdfund, structure it around milestones that you're achieving in the company, rather than timing it thinking investors are going to be most interested in a particular period of time throughout the year. So just focus on that and then structure the crowdfund around what you're building.
There's a quick question around SEIS, which I'll ask before the final question, because you're talking about times of year. Some people say with SEIS, it's better to wait until like March, April, because either people have money left over from the tax year or it's the new tax year. Do you find that SEIS impacts crowdfunding in a positive way, or is there any feedback on SEIS at all?
Generally, no. I think you do tend to find a couple of investors following up if they invest into a business that's listed around January, February, to ensure that EIS, SEIS tax certificates are issued prior to the tax year. But it again shouldn't impact the timing of your raise. Doing a crowdfund, just focus on the business and wrap this around that.
Cool. Final question for Michael from Prasanna. It's about kind of building trust, which I'm sure any other fintechs in the cohort are going to have, as well as health techs and other industries. Building trust with potential users if they're giving you money or giving you sensitive information. How did you do that? Any advice?
Yeah. So I think the first step was really identifying like what their concerns were and really drilling down into that, right? So for example, if someone said, well, I don't really trust, providing my bank details, right? Like what happens to the data, right? So it's like, okay, well, what are you concerned about that data, right? It's like, well, what if the government does X, Y, Z? It's like, okay, well, if they did it, right? And just do kind of like a root cause analysis to really understand, everyone's concern. And then, ask the questions like, all right, well, what can we do as a company to ensure that these concerns are addressed? And that's exactly what we did, right? So we have so many different like security protocols. We encrypt a lot of different things. We work with 2 different law firms to ensure that we're compliant with like GDPR, ICO, all these different stuff. And so I think like the nuts and bolts of it is like, well, let's address their concerns if it's feasible and viable for us as a business. And then number 2, let's ensure that, we communicate that to the best of our abilities, right? So having that on the front page of our website, elaborating on it a little bit more. There's still more that we could do. There's definitely a lot of things that we could do on our website to instill trust and to, elaborate on our security protocols. But I think it really starts there, is understanding their concerns and then actually building the things into your business that addresses it. And, as we continue to do that, we feel that, the questions and concerns that people have aren't catered towards security anymore. They're more about other stuff, now their questions are more focused on like product and marketing and stuff like that. So yeah, hope that answers the question.
Another really quick one for you, Michael. What tool are you using to capture user feedback?
Excel, Zoom, and Miro board. So the way that we really capture user feedback, I shoot up, mass email. Some people say, yes, I'll do it. And I create a list of questions. And when we're doing, like an interview, I try not to write anything. I just record it. And then later on, I go back to that interview and then I extrapolate like the information, what they said, put it onto a Miro board, organize it as such. And then from there, you're able to do like a better analysis on, what that, interview was about. So that's pretty much like the way that I go about it. There's not really a fancy tool that I use at the moment.
Awesome. And then final question, if people want to find you after this, ask you any questions, there's a few other questions that came up on the chat that we didn't have time to go through. What's the best way for them to find you both?
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat. You guys could just directly email me. More than happy to answer questions. I did notice that there was a lot of questions on there, so I copied and pasted, and whichever ones weren't answered, I'll shoot it to you, Purdy, and then you can send it out to them.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Andrew.
Terrific. And I'll also put my email address in the chat and reach out to me on LinkedIn. And yeah, we can always connect there. Happy to answer any questions and connect.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you so much to the both of you. And for the cohort, you'll get an email from us this afternoon. In the meantime, any questions, you know where to find us, and we'll see you on Thursday at 11 a.m.
We'll stick around for a few minutes. So if you've got any specific questions, feel free to hang back here. Otherwise, yeah, take care. We'll send all the databases with investors and all that good stuff that these guys have been talking about for the past hour in an email this afternoon with the rewatch link for the session as well, in case you want to watch it again.
On the platform too.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.